Let's spark that candle, children. Gravedigger Queen here, sitting by the fire to tell you a tale. Zac Valentino sent me another story. Wow, that is interesting. When people send things in to me, I feel a lot like David Duchovny. No, not when he was doing Fox Mulder, when he used to do Red Shoe Diaries. Oh, you didn't know David Duchovny used to do softcore Showtime pornography? Put that in your pipe and smoke it. He'd sit on the beach with his little dog Stella looking out at the ocean, and Stella was like some sort of black and white Labrador or collie or something. I don't know dog breeds really. He'd read the story and then sexiness would ensue. This story that Zac sent to me apparently has a lot to do with dogs. I absolutely love dogs, and I had a hellhound somewhere in the Middle Ages. And of course, he went off to do his own thing, had a brief cameo in the movie Ghostbusters, and got all Hollywood. By that note, if any of you out there listening have tales, please just send them my way. I'm not being funny. If you have a tale, send it to my email. Join the Discord. Tonight's tale is called Murder Makes the Best Dog Adoption by Montsho Shelby. I'm Zac Valentino, and this is from my personal journal, Case 22. Me and Harlii were in the middle of an investigation of the small town of Zancudos. We had already interviewed a few of the people about their missing dogs. We figured that was the story, but it clearly was not. Harlii wanted to take a little B-roll of her doing musings by the lake, so that was where we started. Being beautiful had zero effect on the mosquitoes' appetite, and being that close to the lake, we were feeling their fury. Harlii bore the discomfort like a pro when we were on camera, but the moment I stopped filming, she was a hurricane of vulgarity. We moved along the river looking for anything out of the ordinary. Me and Harlii both made it a point to try and remember some of these twists and turns, because though it was a bitch to shoot in the dead of night, we were probably going to need some night shots just to sell the effect of the video. We had been walking out here for about an hour, and we reached the city's boundaries more or less, so we headed back and inward. I was curious if Harlii had enough to make this mystery watchable, but I didn't want to ask until we were at the motel, because anything that felt like whining or naysaying while we were deep in the investigation would make the trip more frustrating than it needed to be. On the way back, we heard the faint barking of a dog, so we followed it. I made notes with my compass app ever so often and screenshotted places of interest that we may want to return to. We smelled the smell of death far before we made it to the dog, and that took priority. We followed our nose. I checked to make sure my GoPro was on, and my hand cam. It was an awful, unmistakable smell that unfortunately Harlii and I had learned to identify. There was a black haze of mosquitoes swarming several feet before we found the origins of the dead. I had never seen a blanket of mosquitoes so thick. Harlii took out a lighter and wrapped an oil bandage around a stick she had scavenged. I followed her lead and lit up these makeshift torches. The smoke and flame dispersed the swarm. I could hear little pops when the critters flew too close to the fire, and the ever-present buzzing next to my ear made my skin crawl. We could hear the distant barking grow closer, but we put that on hold when we saw what we saw next. A small little terrier was covered in a mass of mosquitoes so thick that we could only make it out when the flames dipped in close enough to scatter them. Harlii looked away in disgust. I was floored by the brutality of it all myself. Harlii backed away. She didn't even want to stay for the sake of the shot. I had to, so I moved in close and attempted to see what killed the poor little thing. Though I can't claim to be a forensics expert, the little dog was puffed up from thousands of countless mosquito bites. But I saw no other signs of distress. Maybe it was bitten by a tick and it went out of its mind. I wouldn't know how to check for that here, and I was not prepared to handle this without the proper equipment. I went to my phone and attempted to look up if mosquitoes drank the blood of dead things, because I seemed to remember somewhere that they were attracted to heat, so why would a mosquito even think to swarm him after death? Unfortunately, my phone got little reception. As my makeshift torch began to burn low, I backed away because I could see the unnatural swarm building around me, looking for a point of entry to get to me. And now that I saw this, I didn't just see the mosquitoes as a nuisance, but a potential threat. When I made my way back to Harlii, she was wiping away a tear, but putting on a brave face for me. The thought of that old woman losing her only friend out here drove me to deep emotional valleys as well. But I didn't think it a great idea to freak out too. Someone had to have their head straight. Before we could process what had happened, a beautiful German shepherd emerged from the forest canopy. It began to bark. At first, I thought it was directed at us, but its head was slightly cocked to the side. It was barking at the dead terrier. The dog didn't approach. In fact, it seemed largely uninterested with us. It drew nearer to the poor terrier. Me and Harlii both ran to either side of the animal when it drew close to the swarm, and the dying light of the fire and the smoke broke up and dispersed the blackness. The dog's attention wavered from the terrier. Perhaps it was never there to begin with, and it followed the blackness of the most concentrated mass of the swarm. Me and Harlii looked to each other, both having deep thoughts and theories on the matter. I attempted to slowly reach the dog's collar and guide it back towards civilization, fearing that whatever happened to Ariel would happen to him. The name on the collar was Hercules, and he had lived up to that moniker when he broke free of my grip as easily as he did. Harlii ran off after the doomed animal, and I followed suit. Every time we thought we had lost him, we heard a bark that led us. We ran for 10 minutes into the brush, and luckily for us, we could see signs of civilization out in the distance, so we didn't need to worry about being lost in the dark. Hercules was barking viciously at nothing either of us could see. When it stopped, it faced a huge tree, and its eyes focused on nothing in particular, but something was riling him. Instead of attempting to wrangle the dog, we decided to trust in his instincts and find the source of his ire. We looked around, tapping tree notches, batting away bushes, pushing at rocks, but we didn't see anything worthwhile. It wasn't the barking that made us stop looking, but the lack of it. After the 2-minute mark, Hercules stopped barking, licked his tongue, then looked around as if his sudden heroicism had fled him. The German shepherd slowly walked over to Harlii and allowed her to pet him, a silent gesture that he was done running and needed to fall back on her for help. Harlii didn't disappoint. She hugged the dog vigorously and calmed him with soothing words. I looked at my phone and noticed that the hour was getting late. It was nearly 7 and sundown was on its way. While Harlii had the dog at hand, I decided that something about this spot must have held some sort of significance. Dogs have senses we can never hope to achieve, so if they try to tell you something, I'm of the mind that we should listen. I climbed the big tree and mounted 2 cameras up there facing 2 opposite directions. If there was something to be found here, maybe it might happen later, and we might have a little film to add to it. Later, when it was all over, I was going to have to apologize to Harlii, though I didn't know what it was we had. We had something.